Hello and welcome. I'm Sam Califer, your host for Vision, the show where we talk all about the College of Arts and Sciences as well as its faculty and students. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jordan Lynton Cox, an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology and Middle Eastern Culture, where she teaches and researches cultural anthropology. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on and talk about all your great work. But first, I was hoping you could just introduce yourself, talk about your professional background, and how you came to Mississippi State.
Yeah, so I'm a cultural anthropologist. I work primarily in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, looking at Chinese communities and Chinese development. So a lot of people ask me the question, there are Chinese people in Jamaica? To which I say yes. So there's a lot of populations that were before even World War II, actually post abolition of slavery in the Caribbean. A lot of Chinese migrants were brought as workers, laborers in the Caribbean and have set up families and lived there for generations. But we also have more recent migration due to China's development initiatives in the area. And so I look at how these communities understand each other, how their relationships impact the development projects that are occurring in Jamaica, how they impact the communities in Jamaica. And so that's kind of what my primary research looks at. I'm really passionate about communities. I study community organizations. I also try to work with communities and in community. And so a lot of my work, even outside of Jamaica, and some of my work in Mississippi is very community oriented.
Sure, yeah, that's so interesting. I appreciate that you're looking into, the migration of people and how different cultures interact with each other. So interesting. I've always liked anthropology for that reason. So yeah, you said that you're a cultural anthropologist. Just to start, could you tell me what exactly is cultural anthropology and what kinds of information are you trying to discover?
Yeah, so cultural anthropology is the study of human culture across time and place. Most cultural anthropologists focus on the present. So we'll focus on kind of big global questions around identity, around nationalism, communities. We look at various global questions and how culture comes into play with these questions. One of the things that we're known for is our ethnographic method, in which we are really passionate about spending time with the communities that we work with. So often cultural anthropologists will live in the communities that they're studying for usually a minimum of a year, often much more, when they'll do what we call participant observation, which is where we actually participate in the activities that people are doing, observe those activities, and use those kinds of information, the interviews that we take, to kind of help us to answer broader global questions. So for example, my questions about how existing communities in Jamaica impact Chinese development in the area. I had to live in Jamaica and work with Chinese cultural associations, Chinese developers, all of those in order to kind of understand those questions from a lived experience. And so that is kind of the uniqueness of what cultural anthropology brings to the table and how we do cultural anthropology.
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that you're in the field, learning about the culture, so it's not just this objective academic view. You've lived it as well, and so it's a more well-rounded understanding of the culture that you're studying. And I wanted to have you on because recently you were awarded a National Endowment for the Humanities grant to help you develop a field school at the Brush Arbor Cemetery right here in Starkville. So could you give me a bit of the history of that cemetery and what do you hope to accomplish through that project?
Yeah, so the history of the cemetery. So Brush Arbor Cemetery is a historically Black cemetery here in Starkville. It actually was created by Black communities here, African American communities here in Starkville. And unfortunately, over time, and as less people were buried there, the cemetery has gone through a lot of stages of degradation. At one point, it had really high grass, and communities here in Starkville helped to cut down the grass, but the tombstones are degrading. We're finding that, unfortunately, a lot of people walk their dogs there. There are a lot of natural and as well as kind of causes because of people, because of urbanization in the area that are degrading the cemetery, even though it is actually registered as a historic site. And so our kind of goal is to figure out how to preserve the cemetery. But one of the things that we're really passionate about, so I mentioned anthropologists love to be with people, and we want to do people-centered research. And so what that means here in Starkville is actually trying to figure out ways to involve the community in the research process and in creating our research questions. And so we've created what is called a community engaged field school or community engaged field program, where we're actually bringing in students from around the country here, training them in methods that are non-destructive, so we're not actually excavating anything or disrupting any graves, that are centered in community, and hiring the input of the community here, and that are preserving. So finding ways to preserve the history of the site, the stories that people have about the sites, or maybe their family members who are buried there, as well as kind of the history of Starkville and how it relates to the cemetery. So that's kind of what we're going to be bringing students for 3 years. And we're actually really excited that we get to fund those students, so we can have an array of students from an array of backgrounds. People don't have to make a certain amount to be able to come. And we're going to train them in these methods. We're going to bring on the community to work with us. And we're really excited to see what this can do, not only for training students about how to do anthropology with communities, but also how we can preserve Brush Arbor long term, and trying to figure out that question of how do we preserve the site? How do we maybe create a digital archive for this site? How do we make sure that the community has what they want from this place that means so much to so many people?
Yeah, I really just appreciate how, interdisciplinary and, it involves so many different types of people. It's local, it's right here in Starkville, and so you're trying to make Starkville better and preserve that history, and then also give the students the training they need. And so it's just such a original approach, I think. I really appreciated that. And you're building the field school. Students are coming here to learn about that kind of work. What are some of the specific hands-on research opportunities they'll get at the field school?
Yeah, so that's really great. So we're still working out. This is our first year. And so there's still a lot of things that we're kind of working out. But some of the core skills that we're going to be training students in is GIS analysis, which is spatial analysis, geographic information systems analysis, which is a spatial form of analysis that also allows you to not only create maps and do analysis with kind of different tools, but also allows you to create something called story maps, which are a more interactive way of sharing research. We're also going to be training students in ground penetrating radar, which is called GPR. We joke that it kind of looks like a lawnmower that pushes signals into the ground, and when it pings back, it helps us to kind of understand what's down there. We have a 3D machine here, so we're going to try to figure out ways to teach students how to use that. We're bringing in some oral historians from Jackson State University, from the Margaret Walker Center, who are one of our partners. And so we're going to teach students how to conduct oral histories, which are interviews that include more of a longer kind of look at your own family history and your life.
Oh, wow.
And then we also training them in online archives. So how to create an archive that is a digital archive that is grounded in community-centered methods. So those are some of the things that we're going to be teaching students kind of on hands-on training. And then those are like the first half of the field school is going to be focused on the hands-on training. The second half of the field school, students are actually going to be creating a project that will engage the community, and they're going to be doing the research on that project. And we are hoping that we'll be able to share that project with the community by having a community anthropology day, where we actually have people come and do the activities with us, learn about our community partners, and interact with the students' projects. And through that, we can have this kind of feedback loop where the community gets to share with us and the students get to share with them. And we're hoping to do that over a 3-year time span, which will help us to every year make the project a little bit better.
Sure, yeah, I love that, and all of those skills sound, like things they would really be doing if they had some kind of historical resources or anthropological job.
Yeah, like things like cultural resource management, working for the government, working in a museum. All of these are skills that people need to be able to work in those jobs and to preserve history in the different ways that people do that.
And I like that it's both preserving the physical place, but then you're getting it online so more people can see it and have access to it. So it's just such a great project.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so glad that you could come here and do that kind of work here at Starkville.
Yeah.
And I wanted to highlight the project for Black History Month.
Of course.
Because, I really appreciate how you're trying to preserve this important African American site. It highlights marginalized voices from the past. But I wanted to get your take on it. What would you say is the significance of doing this kind of work in our day and age?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And it's a question that we're often kind of thinking about in the various projects that we take on at AMIC, because we have a lot of community-based projects. And one of the things that we are trained to do as anthropologists is to highlight people's lives and highlight people's stories, and to highlight multiple stories that often aren't told, right? And so, the story of this cemetery that a lot of people walk by don't even know is there, right? It has such a rich history. We want to be able to highlight that, right? And that's what I try to do through a lot of my work, is to highlight the stories of people and kind of think about what are the different angles that are present here? What are the stories that are hidden? What are the stories that need to be told? And how do I do that from this person's perspective? And so that is something that I think really anthropology can bring to Black History Month. There are tons of anthropologists. I'm thinking about Michael Blakely, who did the African American site in New York, thinking about Zora Neale Hurston. All these people are committed to these stories, and we are committed to those too. So that's what we're trying to, and what I'm trying to bring to Black History Month.
Sure, yeah, there's so much history anywhere you look. And so, literally these people are walking on all of that history and don't even know it. So bringing that to light, I think, is such important work, and I'm glad that you can be here and do that.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for being here today and joining me. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Vision. We'll see you next time.